Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are Team Valor and Doubt, and this is a postmortem of our game, Forklife. Forklife is a top-down puzzle game where the player is tasked with reaching the end of a level, but not without several unique challenges and obstacles that the player will be facing throughout their journey. The main objective is to try and collect all the stars that is awarded with each level, either by completing them strategically or as quickly as possible. Our levels are designed to teach the player how each mechanic works one step at a time, and progressively get harder with each level they complete. During later puzzles, multiple mechanics and obstacles will be present at the same time, forcing the player to adapt in order to make it through in one piece.
Originally, our visionary game was a fantasy and medieval-themed action-adventure game, where the player would have to combat enemies to complete quests and to solve puzzles to progress. To allow for the player to experience as much content as possible, we supplied them with many levels to explore. Once the player completed one level, they were given the ability to freely choose their next open challenge. The combat in the game was thorough, with damage calculations between attacking weapons and defending armor. This allowed us to set up combat situations to test different players. In the hub area, players were able to buy and sell weapons, potions, and armor that could all be used during combat. The money used to purchase wares was earned by completing the requirements of quests you could find. We had lead-up scenarios that send the player off to fight a boss. Each boss fight is slightly different from each of the other bosses that the player has not seen before.
Despite our best efforts, we ran into many issues with our action-adventure game. We had many different systems in place which could allow us to create interesting mechanics, however, many of them conflicted with one another. Melee combat felt terrible to use, and required a lot of kiting backwards. This was caused by many different factors, but one of the major ones was the stamina system. The slower stamina-based ability system really hurt the hack-and-slash gameplay style we should have been working towards. And since combat felt bad, it really hurt our questing too. Quests didn't need to be combat related, but there was no time to develop story, so there was nothing to interest the player. This forced the quests to rely entirely on the lackluster combat. And all of these things together made more interesting interactions like looting and exploring feel really clunky. At this point, we knew we either needed to redesign combat or remove it. Moving forward, we decided to scrap combat altogether and focus entirely on our puzzle design. This brought about many changes to our controller and interactions, however, it greatly improved our workflow. Rather than all focus in one area, we were now able to split up and design levels based on showcasing each new mechanic.
We ran into a few obstacles when we started developing Forklife. We found that most players don't look at the controls menu when playing our game, so we had to make the controls feel more intuitive as well as teach the player in the beginning levels. One of the biggest challenges was getting movement to feel correct, since this is a puzzle game where the goal is to complete each puzzle in the least number of steps. We needed to update the movement to feel more grid-like. Since we were constantly adding more levels to the game, it was hard to focus on difficulty progression. We wanted the game to start out easy and slowly show the player new mechanics while also ramping up the difficulty. This was also the first time any of us has researched creating save data. We wanted to make sure it was efficient and not to have long load times. We also ran into a small issue with files not saving because the folder needs to have a specific name for Unity to recognize it.
To teach the players our control scheme, we took a two-tiered approach. First, we began by designing levels that forced the player to confront obstacles in an escalating manner, so that they learned a new rule on each level. Then, we added some contextual instruction UI for whenever the player reached a new obstacle that required a specific input to complete. In order to enhance the puzzle feel, we chose to limit our players to a grid-based movement system that would count individual steps in order to create an extra targetable win condition, beyond simply completing the puzzle. Players could now track how close they were able to get to completing a level in the fewest number of possible steps. Our last big challenge was to create a player progression path so that each new level would build on the skills the player had previously been taught. To do this, we chose to cut nearly half of our original testing levels into a core of 40 key levels. This decision allowed us to take tester feedback and optimize the level order and focus on refining the puzzles that we had left. It's been a long, strange trip from our project's original concept of a 2D action-adventure game with RPG and puzzle elements to the pure puzzle game that it is now. But the refinement of scope really helped us to deliver a game that's fun, accessible, and something we're proud to present. Thank you, and enjoy Forklife.